Hello and welcome to Cooking the Books with Heather. On this episode, we are going to be working out of Vivian Howard's cookbook, Deep Run Roots. And it is once again muscadine grape season here in North Carolina. Well, we got some from Georgia from the grocery store this time, but pretty soon they'll be everywhere from North Carolina. Lots of muscadine and scuppernong grapes here. And we're going to be making mulled muscadines and whipped feta toast. We're actually going to be eating this tomorrow, but tonight we need to make the mulled muscadines because they need to sit at least overnight in the refrigerator to sort of let all the flavors marry and everything, let it sort of the flavors develop. So we're going to be making that now, and we'll see you at the stove. So we're ready to make our mulled muscadines, and there's a very specific order you're supposed to add the ingredients here, so I'm going to be referring to the book rather often. But first, we're going to put in, I have all of my ingredients already measured out right here. You guys probably can't see them. But first we're going to add muscadine grapes. They've already been cut in half and the seeds have been removed. So I did that for you guys in another episode, and I will hopefully remember to link that right here. We'll see. I'm gonna keep this here to put my spoon in, but all we put in right now, I'm pretty sure, is some water. All right, and we're going to turn the stove to medium high and bring this to a boil. And once it comes to a boil, we're gonna boil it for 5 minutes just as is. Be right back. But while this is coming to a boil, I'm going to go ahead and get my sachet ready. This is a different sachet than the last one we did, but I went looking for cheesecloth. Apparently, whereas early in this whole lockdown, quarantine situation, everyone wanted yeast and couldn't find yeast. Now, apparently, everybody wants cheesecloth and the store was out of it. And so I decided I was going to use one of these little tea bags again. I don't feel too bad about it. There's not that much stuff going in here, and even in her cheesecloth, her cinnamon stick sticks out of it, so that's not going to be a problem. But, so we're waiting for that to come to a boil. I'm going to put some cloves in here and some whole black peppercorns. So whole cloves, whole black peppercorns, and my cinnamon stick, which almost fits, but not quite. But I'm going to go ahead and tie this tightly so that it doesn't come out. This should be just fine. It'll do the exact same job as the cheesecloth. And once again, I will have to try to find some the next time I go out, or I'll just order some to be delivered. I think that's probably what I will do, just order some. And then I'll have it next time I need it, and I bet I won't need it. So I'm gonna put this back in my bowl because we don't need it right now. And I'm going to get some zest from orange and a lemon. And I forgot I need some lemon juice, so I'm gonna have to do that too, but it should be fine from one lemon. So I need 2 strips of zest from each of these, removed with a peeler. So I'm just going to get basically the whole thing and remove 2 strips the whole length. And that's fine for that. And then I'm going to do the same thing for the lemon, 2 strips. Just try to get the outer layer, not the white stuff. Look, we're starting to come to a boil already. So that is ready. I also have a sprig of rosemary, fresh rosemary, just cut it off the plant in my garden. All right, so I'm gonna make sure this is boiling all throughout before I start my timer, just to make sure it is actually a good boil and not just bubbling around the edges. So, anyway, and now I'm going to need to get some juice from this lemon. So I'm going to have to cut that in half and do that. Call that boiling. I'm going to set my timer for 5 minutes. And I'm going to go ahead and juice my lemon, and we'll see when this 5 minutes is over. Okay, so it's been 5 minutes, my timer just went off, and now I'm going to add the rest of my ingredients while it's still at the medium-high temperature. I'm gonna add my sprig of rosemary, my sachet, my orange and lemon zest. Also have some honey. I finally bought some different honey, so it was easier for me to measure out the right amount. So we got honey. We've got some ginger, just minced. And okay, I kind of cheated with my orange juice. I was at the grocery store, didn't want to get this much orange juice from oranges. Didn't want to squeeze all that much, but I found some cold pressed fresh orange juice. So it's all pulpy and just like what I would have. So I decided we were going to use that for this recipe. And then I have my lemon juice that we talked about already. All right, so I've added all that, and it is coming back up to temperature. Now, since we just had the bronze muscadine grapes, not the purple ones, ours is not going to be the beautiful purple color that hers is, but it will taste just the same. So flavor difference, not really, just the color. So we're going to, now that we've added that in, we're going to turn it down to medium low and let it simmer. We're gonna let it simmer for 20 minutes. You're looking for slow bubbles across the entire surface, not just around the edges. So I think this will probably be okay. I'm gonna go ahead and set my timer for 20 minutes. All right, when that timer goes off, this will basically be done cooking. It's gonna get more syrupy and just sort of thicker, syrupy. You know, the honey and the sugars, the water will dissolve more as it boils off, and so that will be done. But we let everything cool to room temperature before we remove the sachet. She does not talk about removing the lemon zest, the orange zest, or the sprig of rosemary. So I assume that that will stay in. But so we're going to boil this, simmer this for 20 minutes, and then we're going to let it cool down to room temperature before we remove the sachet, and we're going to put it in a closed container in the refrigerator overnight at least, or up to 2 weeks. And we'll come back and we'll show you what we do with it. So this has been boiling like this for about 20 minutes now, actually 20 minutes on my timer. But I did want to say that I completely forgot that there was also some apple cider vinegar in it that I forgot to put in the very beginning, but at about 5 minutes in, I put it in. And so it's a little thicker, not too much, a little syrupy. So we're going to turn the heat off, and we're going to let this sit until it is room temperature. Then we're going to take out the sachet and put it in the refrigerator for tomorrow. Next day, I decided that my mulled muscadines were a little thin, not as syrupy. It was more than 2 cups. Supposedly the recipe says it makes a cup. I don't know how you get a cup of stuff from 2 cups of grapes plus a lot of other stuff. So I'm boiling it down a little bit, and I also forgot to add the salt. So easy fix though. I'm just boiling it down a little bit. when we use it, it's supposed to be at room temperature anyway, so it's gonna be okay. Don't have to cool it down or anything, just it'll be fine. But now we're gonna make the whipped feta. In the book, the recipe is not included in this page. It is in a previous recipe and she refers back to it. We haven't made that recipe before, so we're gonna go ahead and make it with this recipe. And all it is, it's just 2 ingredients in the food processor. So I have my feta. Now I chose some good stuff that I thought it was good stuff. I hope it creams up like it's supposed to. It's sort of barrel aged from Greece. I don't know. I went to the nice grocery store and they had a lot of options and that's what I chose. And some buttermilk. We're trying once again to use up some buttermilk. So we have this, our 1 thing of buttermilk now I think I've made 3 or 4 recipes from, so still haven't finished it. All right, so we're just gonna puree this until it is smooth. Okay, I'm gonna check it, see if I need to scrape it down and do it again for a little bit, just, as usual with this kind of thing. Now, it is not super creamy, but it is sort of, I don't know, getting there, maybe. I'm gonna go again. All right, I'm gonna call that done. It certainly looks, kind of see that it's all staying at the bottom now and it looks creamy, so I'm gonna call that done. It might just take a while depending on how creamy your feta is to begin with. Some are drier than others and some are wetter. So, all right, we'll meet you back at the stove to get our toasts ready. Everything else is done. We've done our mulled muscadines. We have whipped our feta, which by the way is very salty. So definitely the sweet tanginess of the mulled muscadines is going to be a good idea. Speaking of, I was looking at the recipe that she did for PBS for her Chef's Life series, and it's very different. Well, not very different, but it has a different method and it has a few other ingredients. But in that one, she also says that if it's a little bit too tangy for your taste, feel free to add some more honey when it's done. But now we're gonna fry the toasts. We have some olive oil heating in a fry pan over medium heat, and I have sliced some baguette into about 1/2 inch slices. Looking at my husband who decides to tell me that it's not correct, that's not 1/2 inch, that's more like 1 inch or whatever. 1/2 inch slices, approximately. It probably doesn't really matter. Anyway, so I think I'm just kind of waiting for my pan to get hot, and it's not quite there yet. But once it's there, we're gonna fry the bread until it's brown. And then we're gonna turn it over, salt it, and fry the other side. I'm going to get some tongs for that turning process. And I have a plate lined with paper towels back here, ready to drain them when we take them off. So I'm probably only gonna do about 1/2 of the baguette. The recipe calls for a whole baguette, but we don't need to eat that much right now. So, and this will keep, the feta and the preserves will definitely keep in the refrigerator for quite a while. I mean, it's very salty cheese, and I think she says the mulled muscadines up to 2 weeks. So you can have it more than once. But you'll want to fry the bread fresh right before. She says that you can, wait in this recipe, she says you can wait up to an hour after you fry the bread. In the other recipe, it says as soon as you're done frying the bread, just spread it with the feta and go ahead and eat it. So it's getting it's a little bubbly. I'm gonna let that one go for a second before I put some more in, and I might turn my heat up a tiny bit. I know when I'm actually frying, like more like deep frying, a little higher temperature keeps my oil at 350, which is generally what you fry at. But so I'm basically just gonna fill the pan. There we go. Oh, I have one more piece. I can certainly fit that in. There we go. Let it go for a couple minutes. I'll check the first piece to see if it's brown, and then we'll turn it over. All right, so I did turn the heat up a little bit because it just wasn't getting brown. And it was just soaking up all of the oil instead of getting brown. So that was about 3 or 4 minutes on one side. So I'm turning them over. Some of them are browner than others, but it will be fine. I'm just going to salt the top side while it's warm and oily, and will absorb. The salt will stick to it, hopefully. Although I'm not super concerned because that feta is, the whipped feta is pretty salty. So, all right, so we're just gonna let these brown, and then we're gonna, when they're all brown on the other side, we'll put them on the plate with paper towels, and then we'll show you what it looks like. So we have all of our ingredients here. She says we're gonna put them together. Very simple. She says to use 2 tablespoons of each, and definitely about equal amounts of each on the toasts. These toasts are pretty small. I don't know if my baguette is smaller than hers. I don't think there's a picture of this particular recipe in the book. Just there's the Mulled Muscadines, which also, if you use the purple ones, it'll be prettier than this sort of brown bronze. But that's what we had. So I'm gonna do maybe about a tablespoon, and the same on here. And it's definitely thicker than it was. Even from the pictures that I saw, you're not gonna get like a jelly type consistency from this, or a jam consistency. It's gonna be kind of runny, but I'm gonna make a few for us to try, and I'll let you know what everybody thinks. On this episode of Cooking the Books with Heather, you watched me make mulled muscadines and whipped feta toast. So this was not super hard. It did require a food processor to make the whipped feta, which is in a different recipe, whatever. Everything else was relatively easy. The hardest part about this is finding the muscadines, which it's a very, short season, and they're not really available outside of the season, and they're not really something that are generally available frozen. So if you have a vine or have access to someone who has a vine, you might be able to find, some frozen ones in their freezers, and a recipe like this would be great for it. So that's the hardest part about this recipe, is finding that particular ingredient. Everything else is pretty easy. Both of these components were not something I think I would enjoy like on their own. The mulled muscadines are tasty, they're sweet, they're a little spicy, sort of like the winter time spices. And they were good, but just not something that I really enjoyed on its own. The whipped feta with the feta that I used was very salty and very sort of funky, but I got an aged feta for mine, and it was just not great on its own, but together they were really delicious. They complemented each other perfectly, and on sort of the olive oil fried bits of toast. It was delicious. So if you have access to muscadine grapes, I would certainly make this. You may wonder about these skins, because usually you don't eat skins on muscadines because they're very, very tough. But even a small amount of cooking renders them very, very tender. So those were not a problem. So if you're thinking, ugh, great, those grape skins would be awful. No, that's not a problem. You don't even notice the grape skins in this. So we really enjoyed it. The kids not so much, but we didn't expect them to really. But the adults really enjoyed it, and we shared it with some friends, and they also really enjoyed it. So yeah, we love the recipe. If you enjoyed watching me make this, please give me a thumbs up, hit subscribe, and come back and watch me make something else next week.